The Homestead Act of 1862 achieved a decades-old dream of redistributing public land for free to settlers. It remains one of the most impactful laws in our nation's history. Many laws, though, had to come before it to make it possible to give away 270 million acres to homesteaders from 1863 to 1986. First, the United States needed to survey and map its land claims to redistribute public lands as private property. The Land Ordinance of 1785 organized all lands into grids of townships and sections of 640 acres that would help homesteaders make their 160-acre claims. We still use this system today. Surveyors and mapmakers would have their work cut out for them after President Thomas Jefferson approved the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Bought from France, the United States claimed an additional 800,000 square miles of land, which would create thousands of homesteads. The Louisiana Purchase of 1803 largely ignored the hundreds of native nations who didn't want to give up their lands. To take possession of these newly claimed lands, the United States passed the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which tried to force all American Indians to move west of the Mississippi. The 1851 Indian Appropriations Act funded the system of American Indian reservations in the West. Land-hungry settlers' demands caused many nations to face repeated forced relocations to smaller reservations with few natural resources. Meanwhile, debates raged about the future of slavery in America. With the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, settlers in these territories could exercise popular sovereignty and vote to allow or ban slavery. Settlers on both sides of the issue rushed into these territories. Anti-slavery forces hoped the Homestead Act would create small landowners and work against pro-slavery hopes to expand large plantations worked by enslaved people in the West. Heated debates over slavery kept the Homestead Act from becoming law. After the Southern states seceded from the Union, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Homestead Act into law on May 20, 1862. Which allowed settlers to claim up to 160 acres of public land for only a small filing fee. In 1863, one of the nation's first homesteaders, Daniel Freeman, claimed the land that would become Homestead National Historical Park in Beatrice, Nebraska.
Well water for man and beast.
For 10 years, we had no neighbors to the north of us except the antelope visited us now and then. The first human visitors were Indians. Never before had I seen Indians. These came for several summers to make their appearance and hunt. Not far from our house, they set up their tent, and we must say this for the Redskins. They were more ambitious than we. Frau Louisa Winkler.
It did not seem to matter in the least to supporters of the Homestead Act that the lands about to be given away were, in fact, already populated.
Before homesteading could occur, there had to be some way of taking the Indian title from them. Settlers were, in many cases, clamoring to get in, and a few of them, of course, had anticipated and had moved across the Red River and began to, in effect, squat or set up places that they thought were on national land. And of course, most of it, the title was still part of Indian land.
As a result of the Fort Laramie Treaties and the Dawes Act of 1887, the government seized title to millions of acres of Indian lands.
The United States did see all of this way and of making land available to real Americans. And in fact, you often hear that phrase, real Americans. And Indians were simply not going to be allowed to stand in the way.
Quarter section by quarter section, railroad and government lands began to attract homesteaders. At first just a trickle, but soon a flood.